Do you remember the screaming? I do. I remember it clearly. It wasn't that long ago. November 2024. The pundits, the professors, the people with the shiny suits and the serious faces on cable news, they looked right into the camera and they promised you that if Donald Trump got back into the White House, the economy wouldn't just stumble, it would crash. They used words like catastrophe, Armageddon, irreversible damage. Well, Friday, the closing bell rings, and what happens? The Dow Jones Industrial Average didn't crash, it didn't stumble, it smashed through the ceiling. 50,000. Let that number sink in for a second. 50,000. That isn't just a number, it's a tombstone for the credibility of every single expert who told you to sell everything and hide your money under a mattress. President Trump said it himself. They told him it couldn't be done in 4 years. Impossible, they said. Mathematically unlikely, they said. He did it in 1 year. 1 year, we are 3 years ahead of schedule. And here is the thing that really drives them crazy. It's not just the rich getting richer. I know. That's the line, right? Oh, the stock market is just a casino for the wealthy. Wrong. Listen to Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, the guy actually running the numbers while the other side is running their mouths. He points out something the media is desperately trying to bury. The Russell 2000 is hitting new highs. Why does that matter? Because the Russell isn't Amazon. It isn't Google. It isn't the $1 trillion club. The Russell is small business. It's the local manufacturer. It's the supply chain, guys. It's Main Street. When the Russell hits a high, it means the guy down the street is hiring. It means the factory in Indiana isn't closing. It's expanding. Bessent calls it a cyclical recovery. That's fancy Wall Street talk for, we are back in business, baby. Industrial sectors, up. Productivity, booming. Consumer confidence, through the roof. And we are 2 months away from tax day. Usually that's a day of mourning. But this year, because of the legislation they tried to stop, the One Big Beautiful Bill, Americans are looking at thousands of dollars in refunds. Real money, in real pockets. But you won't hear that on the other channels. You won't hear about the 5% growth in the fourth quarter. You won't hear that inflation, the monster that was eating your paycheck alive 3 years ago, is sitting at 1%. 1%. That is basically the Fed's target. We are there. They told you inflation was transitory when it was skyrocketing. They lied. Now that it's actually down, silence. Crickets. Instead, they want to talk about fear. They want to talk about chaos. They see gold rallying and they say, see, people are scared. Gold is up 14% year to date. True, but look closer. Bessent told us why. It's not because Americans are scared of the U.S. economy. It's because the rest of the world is scared of missing out. Or worse, they are scared of what's happening in China. We are seeing a global realignment. Money is flowing into the U.S. because for the first time in a long time, the adults are back in charge of the checkbook. But if you think the Democrats are happy about this, if you think they are celebrating 50,000 on the Dow and cheap gas and low inflation, you haven't been watching the Senate hearings. Because while the numbers are going up, the behavior in Washington is hitting a new low. You think the economy is the story? No. The real story is the absolute circus happening in the Senate Banking Committee. I want you to see exactly how terrified they are. Not of failure, they are terrified of success. And wait until you see who they are screaming at. You would think, wouldn't you? You would think that with the Dow at 50,000, with factories breaking ground in Indiana and North Carolina, with inflation finally back in its cage, you would think the Senate Banking Committee would be a place of celebration, or at least a place of serious business. Instead, we got a circus. And the ringmaster of this particular freak show was none other than Senator Elizabeth Warren. I want you to picture the scene. You have Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, the man who spent 40 years on Wall Street understanding how money actually works. He's sitting there ready to explain how we got inflation down to 1%, ready to explain why your 401k is looking healthy again. And what does he get? Does he get questions about economic growth? Does he get asked about the supply chain resilience? No, he gets interrupted. He gets yelled at, reclaiming my time, reclaiming my time. It's the same old song. It's the sound of a politician who has run out of arguments and is now just running on pure, unadulterated panic. At one point, it got so bad, so childish, that someone had to ask, can you shut up? Can you maintain some level of dignity? Dignity. That's the word. It left the building a long time ago for the Democrats. Senator Warren wasn't interested in answers. She was interested in a soundbite. She wanted to trap Bessent. She wanted to know if Trump's pick for the Fed, Kevin Warsh, would be criminally investigated if he didn't cut rates exactly how the president wanted. Think about the absurdity of that question. They spent 4 years weaponizing the Department of Justice against Donald Trump, 4 years of investigations, indictments, raids, and now they are terrified that the same tools might be used against their bureaucrats. Bessent didn't take the bait. He didn't scream back. He sat there like the CEO he is. He even made a joke. And when Warren got confused, because humor is apparently a foreign concept in that committee room, he had to spell it out for her. It was a joke, Senator. But let's look past the theater, because underneath the screaming, there is a very specific reason why Warren and her colleagues are so angry. They are angry because the Trump economy is doing exactly what they said it couldn't. Look at the scoreboard. Under the previous administration, the Biden-Harris years, we saw cumulative inflation hit 5%, a 40-year high. They spent $7 trillion we didn't have, chasing policies that didn't work, and they stuck you with the bill at the grocery store. That is the reality. That is the history they are trying to rewrite. And now, Bessent laid it out clearly. Inflation is down, growth is strong, stocks are at a record high, and the lowest crime rate in over 100 years. Those aren't opinions, those are facts. The Truflation gauge, a real-time measure of inflation, is tracking below 1%. So when they scream at Scott Bessent, they aren't screaming at him, they are screaming at the data, they are screaming at reality. They want to talk about risks, they want to talk about Fed independence, they want to talk about anything, literally anything, except the fact that the plan is working. But here's the kicker. While the Senate is playing games, something much bigger, much more dangerous, and much more important is happening on the other side of the world. And Scott Bessent knows it. The gold market isn't just rallying because people like shiny rocks. It's rallying because of what is happening in China. And if you think the trade war is over, think again. Gold. It's up, way up, 14% year to date. And the cynics in the media are practically foaming at the mouth. They tell you it's a sign of doom. They say, see, people are buying gold because they don't trust the dollar. They don't trust Trump wrong again. Scott Bessent laid it out. And if you weren't listening carefully, you missed the most important part of the interview. He called the gold rush a speculative blow-off. But where is it coming from? China. Things have gotten unruly over there. That's the diplomatic way of saying their economy is shaking. They are tightening margin requirements. Their investors are running for the exits. So gold isn't rising because America is weak. Gold is rising because China is cracking. And while they are scrambling, what are we doing? We are locking down the one thing that actually matters for the next century, rare earths. For years, we let China control the supply chain. We let them hold the keys to our technology, our military, our future. We were asleep at the wheel. Not anymore. The State Department just held a rare earth ministerial. Countries all over the world showed up. Why? Because U.S. leadership is back. We are telling them you are not a sovereign nation if another country controls your supply chain. Simple, brutal, true. And here is where the Trump tariffs come in. The Supreme Court is still deciding if the president can use his emergency powers, the IEEPA authority, to slap tariffs on our adversaries. But let's look at the facts. October 8th, remember that date? China threatened to cut off rare earth exports. They wanted to choke the global economy. They wanted to bring us to our knees. Did President Trump send a strongly worded letter? Did he ask the UN for a meeting? No. He threatened a 100% tariff. And guess what happened? China blinked. They came to the table. They delayed the export controls. That is how you deal with a bully. You don't ask nicely. You hit them where it hurts. And the result? Billions of dollars in investment are flooding into the United States. Companies are bringing factories home. John May, the CEO of John Deere, told the president to his face, we are building 2 new factories, one in Indiana, one in North Carolina. Why? 100% your tariff policy, sir. That is the difference. Under the last administration, we were finding Chinese biolabs in California. We were arresting people for smuggling pathogens. We were watching intellectual property theft happen in broad daylight. It was a free-for-all. Now, we have a president who understands that economic security is national security. We are de-risking. We aren't disengaging completely. We still want to sell them our soybeans, and they are buying them. But we are done being the sucker at the poker table. And speaking of tables, there is another one being set, a digital one. While China is banning crypto and trying to control every digital transaction, the U.S. is about to make a move that will change the financial world forever. And the dinosaurs in the Senate, they are trying to stop it. Kevin Warsh. Write that name down. Because right now, in the back rooms of Washington, that name is causing a lot of heartburn. He is the president's pick for the next chairman of the Federal Reserve. And the establishment, they are circling the wagons. Senator Thom Tillis says he won't confirm anyone until the probe into Jay Powell is over. Talk about stalling. Talk about delaying the inevitable. But here is the truth. Scott Bessent wrote a 7,000-word essay. He didn't call it monetary policy review. He called it gain of function monetary policy. Think about that phrase, gain of function. That is what you do in a lab when you take a virus and make it deadlier. You make it stronger. You make it harder to kill. That is exactly what the Federal Reserve did with your money. For years, under the guise of quantitative easing, they pumped the system full of cash. They inflated the balance sheet until it was ready to burst. They created an economic virus called inflation, and then they acted surprised when it infected every grocery store in America. Bessent is saying the quiet part out loud. The Fed got out of control. It needs to be reined in. It needs to be accountable to the American people, not just the banks. And speaking of banks, let's talk about the other war happening right now. The war on crypto, the Clarity Act. It's stuck in the Senate. Why? Because there are recalcitrant actors, that's Bessent's nice way of saying dinosaurs, who would rather have no legislation than legislation that threatens their monopoly. The big banks are terrified. They see stable coins. They see people moving money instantly without fees, without asking for permission, and they panic. They want to debate bank margins. They want to block platforms from paying you interest. But the train has already left the station. Under President Trump, the United States is becoming the crypto capital of the world. We aren't banning it like China. We are building the best regulations. We are attracting the best talent. We are setting the standard for crypto to survive. It needs clarity. It needs rules of the road. And we are finally going to get them this spring. The banks and the bureaucrats can drag their feet all they want. But the future of money isn't paper. It's digital. And for the first time, America is positioning itself to own that future. But none of this, the crypto boom, the gold rally, the factory openings, matters if we don't look at the calendar. 2026 is coming. And what Bessent predicted for next year, it's going to make 2025 look like a warm-up act. Here's the bottom line. Scott Bessent said something in that interview that you need to tattoo on your forehead. The stock market lives in the future. Think about that. The Dow hitting 50,000 isn't a report card for today. It is a crystal ball for tomorrow. Wall Street isn't betting on what happened yesterday. They are betting on what is going to happen in 2026. And what do they see? They see a big cyclical recovery. They see real income growth, not the fake kind where you get a raise, but inflation eats it before you get to the gas pump. Real growth. They see factories opening. They see supply chains coming home. They see a country that isn't apologizing for being successful anymore. Bessent put it simply, Wall Street is telling you that Main Street is about to prosper. The Democrats? They don't want to hear it. They want to hoot and holler. They want to drag Treasury secretaries into hearing rooms and scream at them about dignity while the economy is literally breaking records. Let them scream. Let Elizabeth Warren reclaim her time. Let the pundits cry about doom on their cable shows. Because while they are busy complaining, the Dow just hit 50,000. While they are busy investigating, John Deere is building tractors in Indiana. While they are busy panicking about China, we are taking back our supply chains. The numbers don't lie. The scoreboard doesn't care about your feelings. And right now, America is winning. So here is my question for you. Are you going to bet on the people screaming in the Senate? Or are you going to bet on the guy who just turned the impossible into a Tuesday afternoon? I'm the maverick pundit. And I think we're just getting started. If you are tired of the media telling you the sky is falling while your portfolio is rising, smash that like button and tell me in the comments, do you feel the boom yet? Or are you still waiting for the trickle down? Subscribe, because the truth doesn't need a teleprompter.